Welcome to the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast, episode number 205. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about forming a incident investigation team. There's not going to be the ideal team, so I want us to think about this in the form of a nuance. How the incident happens and who do we think could best help us out to make sure that this is investigated properly, things are followed up, does not happen again. So I think when we go through this list, just keep in mind that this is an ideal list, but it certainly is not the list that should be used for every incident. Think about what's going to work best for you out there. So let's just dive right in. So um, if possible, we want to use the injured employee. So I think that they add a lot of great insight into things as long as it's not a finger pointing activity. If the other members of the team are basically saying, well, you got hurt, it's your fault, you didn't do the following things. Well, we didn't really investigate this. What we did is pin blame on the employee. There's always going to be reasons why that person did what they did. Maybe they followed the procedure and still got hurt, right? Maybe it was something that nobody had ever envisioned. It happened. Well, and now that we know that it can happen, well, how do we go back and make sure it doesn't happen again? And we'll get into the whole peeling back the onion on root causes and causal factors in other episodes. But let's just continue on with the team. Um, in an ideal world, you also want to get the injured employee's supervisor also. And again, this isn't about, hey, your supervision was not right, thus a employee was hurt, right? We're trying to solve the problem. Uh, Also think about supervisors from a different department out there. And sometimes the supervisor will add in insight that we hadn't thought of. So think about the incident as a slice of pizza. Maybe everybody is looking at it from a different angle. We're bringing in our own expertise, training, background, knowledge, and all that stuff. So sometimes a supervisor from another department who may not even know what that equipment is can ask questions that maybe the rest of us all kind of take for granted and then help to uncover um, why this whole incident happened, and thus, of course, making sure it doesn't happen again. So, uh, somebody from the engineering department would be great also then, because then you could sit down and say, from an engineering standpoint, how do we go back and engineer the hazard out? How do we reduce the incident potential? How do we go back and look at severity? And better yet, because all of us are flawed humans, how do we look at how do we go back and substitute what we're doing? Can we eliminate or can we make a physical barrier? Just so engineering, also somebody from maintenance is really good because a lot of times the maintenance person is only called when something has to be fixed. I can't think of any time I've ever called the maintenance department and said, I have no issues. I just think you're doing a really great job. So a lot of times they come up on a piece of equipment and say, oh, history has taught me that I fixed the following things. I've seen the following errors. I've so they are a very good source. And a lot of times the maintenance guys, because they get around to a lot of places, really get to see a lot of different things, and they add a lot of fantastic insight for folks who don't do maintenance or run this equipment. Somebody from the production department. And that doesn't mean they run the same piece of equipment, but maybe they run a different one, another operator, somebody else out there too to kind of help to peel back that onion, help us to understand. And then finally, one that I've tried, but I've never been able to pull it off. And most of the time, it was from a lack of funds or the person was busy. But is there a way we can get a safety professional from another sister facility? If you have multiple plants and multiple safety folks, it would be awesome to get somebody else from another site. They're bringing in a objective eye. They may or may not run exactly the same equipment out there, but they're probably a lot more objective when it comes down to let's peel back the onion. Let's figure out exactly what happened here. So that's it for today's episode. But the big thing to take away from this is that there's probably not going to be the ideal team that we could say this works for every single incident out there. We never deviate from it. So we probably have to look at the incident and then say, how do we go back and what kind of core competency and skills and experience do we want to bring to the table so we go ahead solve this and we make sure that it doesn't happen again. And part of making sure things don't happen again is we just don't generate a list of ideas and assume somebody else is doing it. You have to have a person who has been assigned that corrective action, followed up on that corrective action, and not just that, but then most of the time the safety professional has to follow up on that corrective action because all of us are flawed humans. We feel busy. We're getting tugged in a lot of directions. So it doesn't mean that person doesn't want to fix it. They just might think, well, the incident's already happened. We made it pretty safe. I got some other stuff to do that seems really pressing, and then I'll get back to it. So we always have to do follow up at all times. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Dr. David Ayers. Thank you and have a safe day.